The front door creaked open, a familiar sound in our home, one that usually felt comforting. But tonight, it hit my ears like a wrong note in a song. Sarah had come home later than usual, but that wasn't what unsettled me. It was her smile, bright, almost dazzling. The kind she usually saved for special occasions, like anniversaries or the day we brought our puppy home. But tonight, it felt different, forced, like a mask that didn't quite reach her eyes. I sat at my desk, the soft blue glow of my laptop casting faint shadows across the room. For the past 2 weeks, I had been planning, scripting, and building. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision. It had taken months of growing suspicion. The secretive glances at her phone, when she thought I wasn't looking, the late-night work calls, the growing distance in her eyes when she looked at me. It had been a slow, painful realization. And now, I had reached my breaking point. "Hey," she said, her voice unnaturally cheerful, a little too high-pitched. "How was your day?" I lifted my gaze from the screen, keeping my expression neutral, controlled. "It was fine, quiet. Yours?" I asked, my voice steady despite the bitterness simmering inside me. "Oh, the usual, just a lot," she replied, trailing off as she walked toward the kitchen. The clink of dishes and the soft hum of the refrigerator filled the otherwise silent house. "A lot," she repeated, her voice fading, as if she was thinking of something else entirely that I couldn't help but think. A lot. Like the countless nights spent with someone else. But I pushed the thought down, forcing myself to stay calm. I let her busy herself in the kitchen for a few moments, the rhythmic sounds of clinking dishes giving me time to collect my thoughts. This wasn't going to be a dramatic confrontation. I had already passed through anger and sadness. What remained now was cold, calculated resolve. I didn't need to scream or yell. I wanted her to truly understand the weight of her betrayal. After a few minutes, she walked back into the study, a glass of wine in hand. Her smile had faded, replaced by something more uncertain, fragile. She looked like a cornered animal, trying to assess the danger she knew was coming. "What are you working on?" she asked, her eyes flicking to my laptop screen. She kept her tone casual, but I could tell she was on edge. The website on my screen looked harmless enough at first glance, just my coding platform, something I had spent countless hours building. The tool I was about to reveal. "Just a little project," I said, allowing a small, almost imperceptible smile to cross my lips. Something I'd been meaning to finish for a while. She leaned closer, scanning the screen. I could feel the tension radiating off her like heat from an open flame. "What is it exactly?" she asked, her voice laced with curiosity but edged with nervousness. I pushed my chair back and stood up slowly. "I think it's better if I show you." I walked around the desk and placed my hands lightly on her shoulders. She flinched, her body stiffening at my touch, like it felt wrong. Strange. I imagine it must have felt surreal to her, like watching a movie of someone else's life. "Just sit down for a minute," I said, guiding her gently toward my chair. She hesitated before sitting, her eyes never leaving my face. A mixture of confusion and dread clouded her usually bright expression. I stepped back and reached into my pocket, pulling out a small, unassuming USB drive. It held the culmination of weeks of careful planning. As I plugged it into the laptop, the screen flickered, revealing something new. What appeared on the screen was a website, one that looked ordinary at first glance. But it had one key, devastating feature. It was a meticulously crafted database, a digital monument to her infidelity. Displayed on the screen were a series of photos. They were grainy, taken from a distance, but there was no mistaking who they were of. The images captured her at the bar she had visited the night before, under the guise of a work event. But she hadn't been working. She had been laughing, touching, and kissing another man. But the photos weren't the hardest part. The real evidence was in the interactive timeline below. Every phone call, every text, every late-night outing she had claimed was for work over the past several months. It was all there, meticulously documented. Each entry was time-stamped, cross-referenced with her phone's call logs and GPS data, and annotated with summary of what I now recognize as lies. The first entry was a phone call, a brief 2-minute conversation. The beginning of it all. She had made the call from the garage, thinking I was asleep. It seemed harmless, a simple conversation about arranging lunch with client, but I had included a recording taken from that same time and place. It wasn't a work call. It was her whispering to her so-called client, eagerly telling him how much she couldn't wait to see him. I watched as Sarah's eyes scanned the screen, her face draining of color. She stood frozen, terror overtaking her. The confident, false smile she had worn earlier was gone. Now there was only pure, unfiltered fear. It was then that she saw it for what it truly was, an irrefutable, meticulously documented record of her betrayal. I didn't take pleasure in watching her crumble. I wasn't angry, not anymore. What I felt was an overwhelming, aching sadness. I could have screamed. I could have lashed out. But I didn't. I just stood there, letting the weight of her lies settle around her like an unbearable burden. Finally, she spoke, her voice barely a whisper. How did you? I pointed to the screen. It's all there, Sarah. Every lie, every betrayal, every secret you try to hide. It's all laid out for anyone to see. I had made sure the website was publicly accessible. It wasn't just me who would see it. Her friends, her family, her colleagues. They were all going to witness the fallout of her actions. IT would ripple through her life like a tidal wave, leaving nothing untouched. No! She choked. Her hand covered her mouth in horror. No, you can't do this. Please, I'm begging you. Tears streamed down her face, but I felt nothing. Her tears were as hollow as the promises she had once made to me. I had expected this. I had even rehearsed my response, knowing exactly what I would say. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction of a dramatic outburst. I'm not the one who decided to do this, Sarah. I said, my voice calm and controlled. You made your choices. Now you get to live with the consequences. She lunged at the laptop, her fingers frantic on the keyboard, desperately trying to shut it down, to erase everything. I stepped back, watching in silence, a passive observer to her panic, to her desperate attempts to undo what she had done. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, she sobbed, her voice breaking. I didn't mean to hurt you. It was just a mistake. A mistake. That's what she called it. But what she had done wasn't a single error. It was a calculated act of deception, carried out over months. And now, she was reducing it to a mere word. The thing about mistakes, Sarah, I said, stepping closer, locking my gaze onto hers, is that they're supposed to happen once. You didn't make a mistake. You did this repeatedly, knowingly, with intent. I paused, letting the weight of my words settle in. And now you get to face the consequences. Without another word, I turned and walked away, leaving her there, a broken, sobbing mess in front of her digital confessional. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. The damage was done. The truth was out, and there was no going back. I packed my bag, walked out the door, and drove straight to the airport. My one-way ticket was already booked. As the plane ascended, I looked down at the city below, its lights shimmering like scattered fragments. I wasn't sad. I wasn't angry. I was free. That chapter of my life was finally closed. As for Sarah, her hell was just beginning.